Come on. Yeah. Break down, come on.
Welcome back, guys, once again to 30 Minutes of Life. I am Ryan Anderson, and joining me to my left is the Skype Man, Hype Man.
Brad Learman.
And joining us today as a special guest is...
Joey McCormick.
Hey, Joey, how's it going?
It's going great. How you guys doing?
Ah, very good. And we're so glad to have you on, honestly, because we have been, having conversations back and forth. We actually even told our fans back in, right around the time of Comic-Con, when you and I started talking about all this, that we were going to put this together. And I'm so glad to have you on so we could actually talk about Teen Titans Go to the Movies. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you get into this industry?
So I am a background designer, living in Los Angeles, California right now.
Okay.
And I started out I went to college at the Savannah College of Art and Design.
Oh.
And studied animation and sequential art there, which is like comic book storyboarding. It's a fancy word for that.
Right.
And then from there, I went to... trying to think. It's like after college, float around for a little bit, figure things out, and then I got an internship at Hornet Inc. in New York City, where they do a lot of commercial work, a lot of short films, more like a good mix of like commercials as well as like films you'd see in like festivals, things like that. Like lots of really cool work, and I kind of got to cut my teeth there for a little bit, and then after I completed my internship, I was a freelancer in New York City for a while, just kind of bouncing around studio to studio, and as much fun as that is, I wanted to go from commercial work to like children's television or just television in general. And so from there, I met a guy who was on hiatus from the show he was working on, who my buddy Leo, and he told me the show he was working on was testing for background designers, and I was like, yeah, I'll do a test, and it worked out. So I moved to Atlanta and started working on the show The Awesomes, which
The Awesomes is great. Yeah, you did that, huh?
It was fun. It was a fun first show, and then I got to do some development work while I was there on this show that came out of nowhere called Future Worm. That like super fun, super weird, and it just happened to be when I was rolling off of some other projects. It was crewing up at Disney they were going from doing shorts to like full time or like a full 22-minute episodes, and I just happened to email the right person at the right time, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're crewing up for the show. Would you like to come on board?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So that was kind of.
So what was the name of that one?
That was Future Worm. It did one season on Disney Channel, and then that's all. It's like the finale just premiered last spring, I think, and that was my first like big, working for a big studio show.
So you've been doing this for how long?
I graduated college in 2011, and then started working probably like 2012, I guess.
Okay.
So 6 years.
And did all that traveling from one end of the coast to the other and down to Atlanta, all that stuff, did that take a lot out of you? How is that shift for you? Is that easy or?
It's kind of fun. Like it's weird now because I've been in Los Angeles for 3 years, I guess, and I miss like moving around because my wife and we moved around a lot chasing work, and now it's just kind of like, all the work's here, so now we're just like sit back, hang out, and
you're kind of settled now, right?
Yeah, now we're like more settled. Like, we don't have to keep chasing the next thing. It's this is where all the work is, so we're kind of comfortable now.
Right, and we've got a little designer of our own, our graphic designer in-house here, Brad. Brad, do you have any questions for him about his work and how he's been doing it?
Yeah. So you said you started work as a background designer. Mm-hmm. What exactly does that entail?
So basically, when you're watching cartoons and the characters are running around doing their thing, they have to be on a stage, and that's the background. So. Oh,
gotcha. Okay.
Just anything not moving in a shot, I guess, would technically be considered the background.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I was wondering about too is you said you were doing other work before you got into like the kid stuff, the animation and all that. First of all, was there anything of notable work that you did before you got into children's entertainment, or was children's entertainment kind of like the drive for you from the get-go?
It was definitely like the drive from the get-go, but it always seemed like pretty distant. Just the idea of working at a big studio seemed really far away. And when I was working in commercial, every now and then I'd get to do something kind of children's related. Like I worked on a pitch for Nickelodeon called Russell and Fox, where we did like a 2-minute animated trailer, and that was actually the first time I ever got to do backgrounds for a cartoon. Before that, I was doing I was animating or sometimes doing like design for a commercial.
Oh wow!
So yeah, that was really exciting. These two directors who I've worked with since I started my career, Dan and Jason at Hornet Inc., they trusted this guy's never done backgrounds before, and they let me like take a stab at it.
Yeah.
And, it was super fun, and as soon as I did that, I was like, "Yep, this is what I want to do."
Awesome.
I'm hooked.
So what brought you into the DC kind of Warner Brothers fold? What was the happenstance that brought you into Teen Titans Go to the Movies?
It was kind of just good timing and luck and having a buddy who was looking out for me. I was rolling off of – so in animation, we kind of – we're contractors. We, go for – like seasons sometimes can run for a year. Sometimes they can run for a couple months. Like just depends on the show.
Sure.
And over – last summer, I worked on Final Space at Shadow Machine.
Oh, yeah.
And that was super fun, but then as that was wrapping up, they weren't sure when they were, if or when they were going to start season 2. And one of my buddies just happened to be doing layout on the Teen Titans Go to the Movies, and I reached out to him just like, "Hey man, you know of anyone hiring?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, we need a new layout guy. Do you want to come aboard?" And I was like, "Absolutely, like 100%, like childhood dream to get to draw, DC comic related stuff." So
absolutely, yeah.
So, trust your friends.
For those who don't know, how would you describe the layout process? What is that like for you on a daily basis?
So the way it starts in animation is you start with your storyboard, which is just, a rough sketch. I mean, this is kind of really watering down what it is, but it's like a rough sketch of what the whole episode is going to be, where you figure out your characters, your locations, your dialogue, your timing, your jokes. Like that's just kind of everything. If you look up like what an animatic is, that's where you kind of time it out and you add your dialogue and your sound effects.
Yeah.
And that gives you just a good idea of what the whole episode's going to entail. And
Okay.
then for background designers, we'll then take that, screen grab out what we need to and figure out like, okay, for this scene, we need 4 backgrounds to cover this area. So you grab all those, sometimes you can comp like a couple shots together. Sometimes everything needs to be separated. And then you start just kind of roughing and designing on top of these storyboards that the board artists do for you. And once you kind of rough out a basic idea, show it to your supervisor, hope they approve it, and then you go over and clean it up based on, whatever style the show has. Like for Teen Titans Go to the Movies, it was this really cool dynamic style. So you wanted to make sure your line weight had a lot of movement to it, a lot of thick-thin variation. Didn't want it to feel too flat or too stale. You wanted to make sure it was like pretty dynamic all the way around.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a really fun one. That was like a really challenging but like rewarding project to work on.
So did you get to actually work with like everyone involved in the studio, or did you just see like passing faces? Like what was the biggest starstruck moment you had in part of doing all of this?
So animators were kind of kept the artists are kept pretty separately from where the records happen, but it was still really cool getting to work on the Warner Brothers lot where they they're filming TV shows and see celebrities. And when you get I think the biggest starstruck moment I had was getting lunch with some people at the commissary there.
Okay.
And Conan O'Brien's just sitting down
That's
right next to you
awesome.
with a couple guys, and it's just like, oh, that's him. And you want to yell, you want to say something, and it's like, no, just let him eat his lunch and take a picture when he's not looking. That's it.
Right. That's so cool. Yeah, my girlfriend's like a graphic designer herself, and she's also like the biggest Conan O'Brien fan you'll ever meet. So She's actually not here right now, but when she returns and hears this episode, she'll be freaking out about that and super jealous. But yeah, that's got to be awesome. Brad, is there any other questions you had for him about like how he goes about his routine?
Oh, God. So tell us a little bit about your storyboarding process. Like, how do you get that started?
So for storyboarding, there's kind of two styles. You have script-driven and board-driven. So script-driven, it's just like the name. Everything kind of follows the script. There's room to punch it up, but like the script is king. You want to make sure you're carrying that, like what the writers have put together. You want to make sure you're like getting that across as clearly as possible by, staging your characters in the scene, making sure that the timing's right for jokes, like the physical comedy's there. And then the other option is board-driven, which you kind of start with just like a premise, like Adventure Time's a board-driven show, where it'll be, more focused on like, okay, we want, a writer will come up with the premise, like we want the two characters for this to happen, and like I'm sorry, I'm like very like butchering this description.
No, it's all right. Honestly, you're probably making it just broad enough that I think our fans would understand. Because I heard you guys before this, and you guys were getting really into the weeds of it, and it was just going right over my head. So this is great.
Yeah. So for board-driven, it's more of a collaborative experience, I think, where you have the writer, the premise writer, kind of coming up with a concept, and then the board artist taking that and they're kind of filling in the moment to moment. So they have like the overall idea of what the episode needs to be, and the board artist in their panels of, throughout it, they're adding in jokes and storytelling and, more concepts. So the current show I'm working on, that one is script driven. So we have a lot of, what the board artists there are doing is taking it and just breaking it down scene by scene. Sorry, I'm not. I don't.
You're fine, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like just kind of like filling in what my buddies do.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: do you actually get to create any of the dialogue that's used for these movies, like in terms of jokes that might be hitting or missing? Do you get to make any of the calls on that sort of thing, or who does that?
No, that's more on the storyboarding, writing, directing side. As far as like background and design, we're kind of just like, a good background is best when it's not like, I think like the characters or like the performance and the story is kind of the most important thing. So when doing backgrounds, I don't want to get in their way. Like you throw a background joke in here once in a while, but at the end of the day, that's kind of like, if that needs to go, it's like, yeah, get rid of that joke. It's, it's too distracting or something like that. See, because that was one of the things that was so great about this movie for those who have or have not seen it. Throughout the course of the movie, there's all these little, Superman's mustache, where did it go kind of posters in the background and stuff. And I was wondering, like, did you get to make some of those, or did you make the call as to some of those being put into the film? So almost all those really genius bits were done by Dan Hitt, who's the art director of the TV show. Okay. He brought he has such a great style, and has such a love for the DC universe, but also understands how funny it can be and awesome. How much fun you can poke at it. So throughout working in the background, so I was definitely trying to add in little bits like that, but as far as the big ones, I think everyone knows the mustache and I'm trying to think what else he had thrown in there. There's so many good all those movie posters. There was Detective Chimp. They did they had a running bit in the movie with the Challengers of the Unknown, which was great. Yeah. I love so many of the background stuff in the movie, and I think a lot of people tend to overlook it. I know a lot of people, even in our group chats that we have, talking about what's big in the news and all that stuff. They'll tell me, they dismiss it because it's so for kids, and I'm like, if you look behind the scenes, there's a lot of kind of adult and heavier jokes going on. You just got to keep your eyes open, and I think it's a kudos to people like him or like the animation team, people like yourself who are putting these little trinkets in there, and I really think that they did a fantastic job with the movie. I don't know, for Teen Titans Go, the TV show and the movie, it has such a good it takes pop culture in a way a lot of shows aren't able to. Like it pokes fun at it. It's self-referential.
Oh,
It
yeah.
takes kind of the online like backlash of the show, and it turns those into episodes. It reminds me a lot of like Animaniacs, how that was referential to like pop culture at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel like there's too many shows, at least on network television, kind of doing that, especially not as well as like how Teen Titans Go does it, because they seem confident in making fun of the DC universe and Warner Brothers in general.
Right. I've actually said to some people, like, it's just a lighter-hearted version of what Deadpool's doing in the live action and in the comics. Like, they're taking that mirror and then they're kind of shining it back on the people who are, making all these really weird decisions. And I really love that. That's one of the things that, like, I actually was not a big fan of the Teen Titans series in the early 2000s. It was kind of a hard sell for me. I just wasn't there at the time. Same thing with Static Shock. And then, like, I kind of came back into the fold because DC animated movies have just been so fantastic. And then along comes this show that I immediately dismissed. I was like, oh, this is just a kiddier version of what I was already kind of unfeeling. I wasn't really into it. And then I put it on in the background just the other day. This was probably 3 or 4 months ago now. And I just got sucked into it. I mean, I just watched every single episode. It's so fun. Well, let me ask you this.
It definitely has that effect.
Yeah.
You just get like trapped in it because everything happens so fast. And one of the episodes I worked on that takes place right after the movie came out last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that one was super fun because they let me just basically, I don't want to spoil the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it, but just like heads up spoilers. The tower gets destroyed in the movie.
Yeah.
And so they have an episode dealing with, we need to like get a new tower. And they're going to like get the paperwork signed, but like the city planner won't sign it. And like, so they're like trying to do all these things. And when they finally get it to work, they let me just like go crazy on the tower on the inside. So like there's just tons of references just shoved in everywhere. There's what's the shrunken city
Bottle of Candor?
Yeah. So that's like the centerpiece of their dining room table in it, and like just lots of little weird things everywhere. Even there's one background because at the time the new Thundercats show hadn't been announced, but internally we knew about it.
Oh, okay.
So I added a bunch of Thundercats weapons mounted on the wall, just like stuck back there, and it was cool that they let me just do whatever I wanted.
So if I'm not mistaken, this was like the 200th episode that they were advertising was going to follow up the movie, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I think the 200th episode came out a little before. That was the behind the scenes one, right?
See, well, I actually watched it on my computer, and like the way that it was advertised when I clicked on it was the 200th, but I could be wrong on that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, maybe I'm mixing up. I see the ones I worked on.
Right.
I'm like, cool, let me go see that stuff.
Yeah, once you get past 100 episodes, it's got to be hard to follow all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of doing those, because I actually really love that joke, that entire episode too. They have this whole running bit with Slade the entire time. So much so that I was actually in a hotel for work, and I turned on the TV and boom, it was on, and they were already advertising. It was like the Fallout episode of that movie. So I got all excited about it. I was like, oh, what are they going to do? And then he kept repeating the Slade joke. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a great way to continue on from the movie, because I feel like the movie goes by so quickly that I felt like I wanted to get more. And they pick up right where they left off, and they do such a good job with the show that, whether it's you or anyone else involved in that process of making that film and that TV show, I'm just blown away by what you guys put into there. Like even one episode, I saw they had like a dead robin's ashes in the corner, and I was like, "Jeez, it's so dark, man."
It's so dark.
Like, I don't know if you ever get hit with censors or anything like that on some of the content you guys do. Has that ever been an issue, or?
On this show, it hasn't. I haven't had any, or on Teen Titans Go, working on that, I don't think I ever got hit with censor stuff, because usually they wanted us to pump it up with references, and the on the TV show, the art director Dan, he loved that stuff. He wanted, like, he was all about, like, whatever the theme of the episode was, he wanted to, like, shove it in there. So we did one episode where they go, it's like a father-son thing with Beast Boy and, like, this duck. He laid an egg when he was transformed. Yeah. And it's so everything in the episode is supposed to be referencing like fathers of the DC universe. So there's Ra's al Ghul on the side of a booth. There's Deadshot like stuck around. All not the best fathers,
right?
But just trying to sneak those in there. When I was at on previous shows, though, I've run into that before. Like, we've had issues like you never know, like, what will be interpreted as this. Like, we did this demonic episode of Pickle and Peanut once. I don't know if you guys have seen that show.
I am not familiar with that one.
It's a really funny, underappreciated show that Disney did for a couple seasons, and I was fortunate enough to work on the second season, and there's one where they go to a bowling alley that when it goes to blacklight bowling, that's actually them summoning demons in blacklight bowling mode.
Wow, okay.
So I drew all these, like, really weird just symbols that look demonic but also bowling-y, and then we got a note that was like, oh, that's like this symbol means this in that language. It's like, oh no, can't do that. Okay, like, get rid of it, because you're just like, when you're just making little scribbles, you're not sure like what those will actually, like, I didn't think they actually meant anything, but then, once legal goes through, they, like, fact check every little, they, like, scrub through to make sure no one's sneaking anything in there. They, like, picked out a couple that are like, oh, this means something weird in this language, this means something that. I'm like, okay, like, change it, make it a pitchfork, we're good.
Right, yeah. Keep it simple. But that's still really cool, though. Yeah. So, kind of to wrap this all up a little bit here, what is, like, your next big project that you're hoping to take on? Like what is your wishful goal with your animation? Do you want to evolve and move on to another thing, or do you want to just take on another sort of franchise?
I think the big push I've been having right now is trying to transition over to doing comic illustration.
Okay.
It's something I've always loved as a kid, even before, like, cool. I feel like comics were always, like, my first love, and I have a graphic novel coming out in February, for a children's age graphic novel that I'm doing through Boom Comics, and so I'm just trying to get, like, transition more into being a comic artist that also does animation instead of an animation artist that also does comics. Very cool.
You care to talk about it a little bit? And feel free, now is the chance to plug it.
Plug it. Oh yeah. So it's this story I made it, 2 years ago. Just kind of I wanted to prove that I could draw comics, like,
sure,
and submit them to like companies and be like, hey, do you guys have any, like, freelance comic work I could do? So I did one issue called Wizard Party, and it's about Red the Blind Wiz, and there's a great beast coming to, like, ruin the realm, and so he has to gather the wizards of the realm and summon the great wiz to stop it. And so I did one issue, and I sent it around and heard nothing from anyone, and I was like, okay, that's great. And then I sent it to Boom Comics, because I had worked with an editor there on an Adventure Time cover a little bit before.
Oh, okay,
and
cool.
I just was like, hey, I'd love to draw comics, like, just wanted to prove that I'm able to do it. And they got back to me, and they had me write and illustrate an Adventure Time story, like 12-page story, just one-off, do whatever you want, have fun, and it was awesome. And then they asked if I wanted to draw 4 issues of Adventure Time, so I did 4 issues of Adventure Time, and that was awesome. And while I was doing that, they were like, hey, this story you sent us, are you trying to pitch this? Like, what is this? And I was like, oh, it's just a story idea I had. Like, I'd like to pitch it if that's something you guys are open to. And they're like, absolutely. So working with the editor, I did, like, a full manuscript, and my lovely stepmother helped me write properly because I'm garbage at it. And put all of that together, and yeah, just went back and forth with the editor and Boom Comics, and last January it got greenlit. And so now I finished writing it. I finished the roughs, and I'm currently inking it and sending it, so just kind of going through that whole process, and the whole thing's supposed to come out in November, I think. And
oh, nice.
It's not called Wizard Party anymore. Now it's called The Great Wiz and the Ruckus. So,
I like it.
yeah, if you're a fan of, like, it's all, like, based in kind of like JRPGs and Final Fantasy and
nice.
like Kingdom
That's
Hearts.
up my
Like
alley.
just, yeah, so that, I don't know. It was just, stuff I loved as a kid and wanted to share that kind of.
No, that's really cool. Actually, Brad's been doing a lot of our comic book reading from other artists and things like that. So if you want to link us with a couple like early pages that you guys have, we can post them out there, kind of build the hype a little bit for what you're doing, and really get some traction on this.
Yeah, I'll definitely send you guys that. We have a cover that's out right now.
Okay.
That has been released, and then we're working on a preview of the first 4 pages. Like, those are getting taken care of right now, trying to get them polished, so hopefully we can show some stuff off soon.
Very
cool. And then I'll definitely shoot that over to you guys to spread the word. I would appreciate any marketing you will give me.
Anything we can do to help, man. Anytime.
And I have one question before we
do
end
it.
this.
Sure.
Besides the whole DC Comics and comics in general, what are some other influences that have kind of led you to where you are now?
Video games are probably the biggest thing. Like, growing up, I played kind of everything. Super Nintendo, PlayStation, like everything. Pokemon. I remember just like playing Pokemon by like Streetlight. Just sitting there.
The good old days.
The good old days before we had backlights on things.
Right.
And, I remember playing like Resident Evil 2 with my dad when I was way too young to play that. Like, there's definitely been a huge influence of pretty much everything I do is like lightly grounded in video games. I've been doing like just tons of drawings of Mega Man lately because the collection just came out and it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Cool.
I think you basically said everything possible to make you Brad's like biggest fan of you right now. So, yeah.
Hey, we're just limited to this recording for now. How's that?
That works. You guys can always keep in touch. But honestly, we want to say thank you so much for coming on. This has been 30 Minutes of Life. Any other quick plugs or anything that you want to toss in, Brad, before we sign off here?
Actually, I'll let Joe plug in anything that he wants to.
Absolutely.
So right now I'm working on the TV show Amphibia.
Oh, cool.
I don't know when that's actually coming out. But
what network?
Get ready for it. It's going to be awesome. I think you can find some promo art online. The Great Wiz and the Ruckus comes out in February. And yeah, I think that's it. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's Joey MCC, and yeah,
Brad's doing that right now. I guarantee it. So where is Amphibia on?
It's going to be on Disney TV.
Okay.
TV XD, maybe.
Oh, the XD.
Not sure.
Okay.
I think it's going to be on XD. Might dabble on the channel. They've been putting some stuff on the Disney Channel too. So
yeah,
I'm not totally sure.
They can easily find the name, I'm sure. So that'll be easy enough and cool. Again, it was a real pleasure having you on. Got to learn a lot about the industry. Even Brad, like I didn't even know half these things, and he's even making me a little bit more aware of what's going on with all this stuff. So again, thank you for coming on. This has been 30 Minutes of Life, and we will see you guys again another time.